DeepSeek, electric vehicles, and the far side of the moon. These aren't just buzzwords, they're shaping the narrative of today's tech industry in China. In February, South Korean investors' holdings in Greater China stocks surged to almost $800 million, a staggering 179% increase from the previous month. And now a new term is making waves, the Terrific 10, a group of Chinese tech giants being compared to Wall Street's Magnificent Seven. South Korea has long been a nation of savvy investors, always on the lookout for the next big opportunity. So, what's behind this growing appetite for Chinese tech? In this episode of Deep Dive, I'm joined by Jungjoo, a reporter at the Korea Herald, to break down why South Koreans are shifting their gaze toward the Chinese stock market and what this means for the global tech landscape. It's Friday, March the 21st. Welcome back to the show, Jungjoo. It's been a while.
Thank you. It's been fun doing this in the past, so glad to be
Yeah, yeah,
back.
yeah. We've always enjoyed your storytelling, and this time
Thank you.
yeah, and this time it's about this growing trend of South Koreans investing in the Chinese
Hmm.
stock market. And I have this number that as of 2023, there were over 14 million active individual stock trading accounts in South Korea. And for a country with a population of about 52 million at the time, this means
Hmm.
roughly 1 in 4 South Koreans is actively involved in the stock trading. So the question
Hmm.
is, are you one of those 25% or the rest 75%?
I'm the rest of the 75% that
Okay.
doesn't really invest. I do have a bank account that allows me to make investments if I want to in the future, but I haven't really got around to using it. I think I do want to start at some point, but I think right now the economy just feels too shaky and a little bit risky for me to take action. So I'm trying to wait it out a little bit before I make my own decisions.
That's okay. But I surely have heard the reputation of the active retail investor culture in South Korea, which is quite
Mhm.
much higher than many other countries in the world. And there's even this word, and I tried to learn this from Google, gami tutsatsa, gami tutsatsa.
Kimi 투자자. Yes.
Mitutata, which means and investors, well, and
Hmm.
which is used to describe the individual investors that are very willing to invest and to perhaps even take risks in South Korea. So can you tell us
Hmm.
about what's the origin of this term, kami tutata, and is there kind of like a mindset that it reviews about the individual investors in South Korea?
So the origin of the term is quite metaphorical. It compares the small retail investors as ants, and Kimi means ants or ant investors. And so in South Korea, ants are seen as hardworking, like small but like numerous in numbers. And so the term ant investors basically it highlights the idea that despite these individual investments being small compared to, let's say,
Hmm.
institutional investments, when they're combined, they form a significant force in the market. And so the term 개미투자자 or ant investors first emerged in early 2000s during the growth of Korea's retail stock market. The government at this time, they encouraged the public to invest in the stock market more to increase wealth and to also stimulate economic growth. And I remember I was only a child back then, but I also remember some family members discussing heavily about what kind of stocks to invested in like next, and they were all watching TV programs about like how to invest better and stuff like that. I mean, this trend is still going, but I remember it was pretty heavy back then. But anyway, this mindset basically, I think it reflects two keywords. One is of collective action, and the second is of self-empowerment. It underscores the growing participation of everyday people in the financial markets. And so even if they earn like less capital compared to institutional investors,
Right.
in recent years, as more young South Koreans have turned to stock trading with increasing frequency, the influence of ant investors have grown, especially with the rise of mobile trading platforms in Korea.
So each individual investor might be small, but together they might be able to make a difference
Yeah.
and
Yes,
investors,
you're right.
right?
Hmm.
So this passion enthusiasm among these individual South Korean investors has been attributed to societal factors like the cable
Mm.
dominance, the income inequality, and perhaps the intense competition in the society. And do you think these factors they have fueled this get rich quick mentality
Mm.
among these investors?
Yeah, so 재벌 dominance, like you said, income inequality, and intense competition. All three of them, I think, can be said to have contributed to the enthusiasm for investing amongst ant investor Koreans. I think I'm gonna break this down to three parts so I can explain it a little bit better for each of them. So to talk about 재벌s, South Korea's economy has been long dominated by a few large conglomerates. I'm
Right,
sure you know some like Samsung, Hyundai, SK, and those big companies. And their success or failure, it has a direct impact on the financial well-being of Korea, and they're often seen as a key barrier to the ordinary people's economic freedom. And so they see these conglomerate stocks as safe bets because they know that even if they fail, they won't dip like super quickly,
right.
and they will eventually result in some sort of success in the future. But basically, their desires for higher and quicker returns and to earn fast real quick that are more exciting makes them turn to small and emerging companies instead. And I also read somewhere that these ant investors, they are wanting to invest in smaller companies so that they can also hopefully get a little bit similar in terms of their wealth to those people who are way up there in the
Right.
conglomerate sector. And so that's also where income inequality comes along, I think. And so compared to those really rich chaebol families and ordinary Koreans, there is quite an income gap. And for many people, they say that traditional career paths do not offer a feasible route to economic security or upward mobility. And so as a result, investments for them become a way to bridge this wealth gap. And so retail investors here see the stock market as an alternative avenue to quick wealth and accumulation. And so then to kind of touch upon intense competition here a little bit. So across various sectors in life in Korea, education, employment, and personal achievements, they all you can see some sort of like intense competition in all three of those areas. And this high stress environment, it pushes individuals to stand out or to get ahead because it also pushes them to constantly compare themselves with other people who seem to have a little bit more than them. And so it leads them to pursue additional sources of income, like investing, so they can, like, I don't know, get a house in Gangnam
Mm.
or buy this really fancy car. So they can also look like they are more ahead compared to their other people that are surrounding them. But this intense environment, it also kind of shapes the people's mindsets towards taking more risks and, striving to get short-term rewards out of this dopamine rush that they get from investing into these small companies. And so, in a society where success is highly valued and often defined by material wealth, the stock market offers some sort of like an immediate and potentially rewarding outlet for people to level up, I guess, financially, but also in terms of their quality of life.
Right. So with this social pressure, perhaps everybody
Mm,
has this dream of getting rich overnight and living the
mm,
life they've always looked up to.
yeah,
Yeah, so it seems like
exactly.
South Koreans, I mean, on top of this passion for investment, actually specifically, they also enjoy investing in the overseas stock market. Last year,
Mm.
this report from Korea Economic Daily reported that Korean retail investors' stock holdings in the U.S. had hit record high, and also in just under 6 months. Their holdings on the Nvidia Group, which was a
Mm.
popular stock last year, had nearly
Mm.
tripled in less than 6 months. And what do you think was driving this trend in people's passion for the overseas stock market, specifically the American one? And also, do people have a preference for tech firms?
So there has definitely been a growing and quite a dominant interest in US stock market amongst Korean investors. There's this saying that my friends tell me all the time, those who are like avid investors. They say like if you want to make a lot of money, but also like invest in something for the long term and you don't want to like touch upon it, you should invest in US stocks because
Mm.
you won't see much of that growth by
Safe
just
and
investing in
stable.
Korean ones. Yeah, safe and stable, and also you'll just earn a lot more. So I think several factors are driving this investment trend, with one being the mobile trading platforms that I mentioned earlier, and of the globalization of financial markets. And trading platforms in Korea basically has made it really easy for individual investors to begin to trade foreign stocks like US stocks, as they offer these tools and like resources to help them manage international investments easier. And so this easy access combined with like a greater awareness of global markets, it led many retail investors to diversify their portfolios by investing in US stocks. And Korean investors, especially those who have historically focused on domestic stock markets, are kind of seeking to diversify their investments more. And so the Korean stock market, while it is very active and it is growing, a lot of investors say that it is quite limited in terms of the sectors that are available for their investment, while
Mm,
the US offers more diverse opportunities.
right.
And the US is home to some of the world's largest and most influential companies. So a lot of investors are eager to gain exposure to these businesses as well, and to also kind of touch upon a little bit of money from doing that as well. So anyway, I guess you could say that there is a clear preference for tech firms among South Korean investors. Like companies like Apple,
Mm,
Tesla, Nvidia, like you mentioned, are some of the most popular investments. The attraction to such tech stocks are driven, I think, by factors such as those companies having strong growth potential and Koreans being familiar with such tech firms from the use of their products or from their exposure in the news, and also the company's just general global prominence, as well as their like the explosive growth that these firms experienced in the past decade.
Nvidia last year, Nvidia was a popular stock among many
Mm,
retail South Korean investors. And now moving the timeline to this year in early 2025, and we
mm,
know that Nvidia stock took a hit, plunged, following the release of the Chinese AI chatbot DeepSeek. And
mm.
how did South Korean investors react to that development? And was that a very important turning point for them to start looking at the Chinese stocks?
Mm. Well, for many South Korean investors who had been primarily focused on Western tech giants like Nvidia, the rise of DeepSeek and other Chinese innovations other than DeepSeek in the past, it kind of
Mm,
sparked like this reevaluation
right.
of their investment portfolios. And I think their view
Diversify.
of Chinese companies too. Yeah. And it kind of sparked this fear among South Korean investors investing into semiconductor stocks in South Korea too, like SK Hynix, for example, which grew significantly as the artificial intelligence market grew. But with DeepSeek showing that it's possible to develop a service similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT without like having cutting edge AI chips from NVIDIA. A lot of investors were kind of on edge, thinking like the kind of impact DeepSeek could serve from there, and like if they should, diverge their
Mm,
investment route from there as well to like invest in more diverse sectors. And the rise of Chinese AI technology, I think, also presented new investment opportunities for Korean investors. But I think a lot of people are still kind of remaining cautious due to the fact that there are still some trade tensions that remain between China and the
right.
United States. And there are also some sort of regulatory risks in China from the US as well. And so South Korea has kind of historically faced challenges based on like balancing their economic ties with both the US and China. And so a lot of investors have been kind of concerned about that, as they see that investing in Chinese tech companies could be seen as something that's a little bit riskier due to the potential for maybe government intervention or like tightened regulations or restrictions. But right now, those concerns aren't like, like it hasn't been made into reality. So a lot of people are still sort of turning to it, but a lot of people are still kind of voicing their concerns about, making this new decision in their life.
Right. Maybe the concerns have always been there, but now the
Mhm.
profitability and the potential that
Yeah,
we see in these stocks have overridden the concern
yeah, you're totally right. Yeah.
for those areas. And so
Mhm.
far, I think there's no definitive evidence to connect this growing trend to DeepSeek. But I think it's safe to assume that this Chinese AI chatbot had played a very important role in this transition.
Mhm.
Even though this company DeepSeek is not publicly listed yet, there are many other Chinese technology companies that have led the gains in the Chinese stock market. And there's even a
Mhm.
term of this so-called terrific 10,
Mhm.
a group of Chinese tech companies giants that have been compared to the Magnificent Seven on the Wall
Mhm.
Street. So, what are these popular Chinese the tech stocks among South Korean investors? And is there a kind of a channel, special channel they use to invest in the Chinese stock market, like maybe through an media, South Korean
Mhm.
agency, or establishing account on the Chinese stock market directly?
I'm not sure if they're as popular as US stocks at the moment, but they are definitely gaining popularity in recent years. Chinese tech companies, especially those in AI, e-commerce and green energy and internet services like cloud computing, they are becoming attractive investment options due to its rapid growth and the expansion of the Chinese tech sector. And so as part of the investors' I guess strategy of diversifying their
Mm.
global portfolio, Chinese tech stocks have served as some sort of exposure to the growing Chinese economy as well as the investors believing that these companies have significant growth potential. As for channels, brokerage platforms that have simplified the process of foreign stock trading have been used by Koreans to trade international shares. But there's also ETFs or exchange traded funds and
Mm.
index funds that are tracking the performance of Chinese tech companies too. So those two platforms have been the most popular in Korea.
So the release of DeepSeek had sparked debates about whether the America is losing the dominance in the global tech race. But the difference, the gap between South Koreans' individual investments in the American stock market and the Chinese one is actually still pretty huge, the difference. The most recent data that I have is that in November last year, South Korean individual investors' investment in America actually surpassed 100 billion US dollars for the first time. And
Mhm.
last month, their investment in the Chinese one soared to almost 800 million US dollars. So the difference is still pretty huge, even though
Mhm.
their investment in the Chinese one has been seeing quite significant growth. And
Mhm.
so, following these debates between uh, the rise of Chinese tech products and the American one, do you think South Korean investors they are changing their perception of the U.S. tech sector and perhaps in terms of investment?
Mhm. The US still remains quite a dominant player, like you said, but
Right?
the increasing prominence of Chinese tech firms has made South Korean investors kind of reevaluate their strategies and perceptions, especially regarding the Chinese tech companies' growth potential and their competitiveness value. And so South Korean investors who are always looking for the best growth
Mm.
opportunities so they can also earn the most cash may now perceive the US tech sector as facing increased competition from Chinese companies like, just firms like Alibaba and Baidu are they're rising as competitors against US-based companies in sectors like AI and cloud strategy. And then South Korean investors no longer see the US tech sector as the sole leader in innovation in terms of foreign investments. So it could also make them divert into, choosing different options here and there. And as Chinese tech firms, they continue to grow and expand globally. Many South Korean investors are increasingly allocating their capital to Chinese tech stocks. And this kind of, I think, could be driven by the perception that China's rapid technological developments, it offers unique opportunities for high returns, and which is, what these South Korean investors would always want from their investments.
So the American stock market is still undoubtedly the most popular one, but now it appears there's a second option emerging
Mm.
for the individual investors. And now, despite the popularity of DeepSeek, the South Korean government had actually released a temporary ban on this Chinese AI chatbot over data privacy concerns. And I'm wondering, are there other Chinese tech products that are common in South Korea? And what's the general public perception of these Chinese tech products?
Chinese tech products have become quite common in South Korea over the years. Like, for example, Xiaomi and their
Mm.
household products are pretty common. Like, I have a Xiaomi vacuum cleaner as well. Chinese
How is it
smartphone
working out for
brands
you?
It's pretty good actually.
Yeah,
It does the job, which is, great,
great.
which is all I ask for. But other than, household products, smartphone brands like Xiaomi and Huawei, as well as e-commerce platforms like AliExpress, Taobao, Shein, they have gained like immense popularity in Korea as they provide access to affordable and diverse products
Mm,
that sometimes they offer the same kind of products as like I guess what a Korean company would offer. It has the same, features and everything, but it's just a lot more cheaper, which makes people to, divert to the Chinese I guess tech companies and what they offer as well. But I think the perception of Chinese tech products in Korea are quite mixed, just to focus on something like DeepSeek, for example. Many consumers, they acknowledge that Chinese tech products offer good quality at affordable prices, and it makes such products more appealing to especially those consumers who are more, I guess, budget conscious of like
mm,
the money that they spend. But there are also some who are very cautious about Chinese technology and they cite like security concerns with it. A lot of them talk about how the Chinese government it holds like a certain influence over domestic companies and they like hold track records of like I guess censorship and surveillance and it leads to concerns about their private data being collected by these Chinese tech
mm.
companies. And I think the DeepSeek ban is definitely a reflection of these concerns. So while the chatbot might have seemed like a huge, like, technological breakthrough, its potential to collect and store sensitive information kind of raised alarms about user information safety in Korea too.
So now, apart from investing in the Chinese stock markets, do you see South Koreans showing more interest just to getting to know more about the neighboring country in general?
In South Korea, like a lot of people are increasingly showing interest in learning more about China, definitely. For example, Mandarin Chinese is one
Mm,
of the most popular foreign languages that are learned in South Korea in recent years. It's kind of driven by China's economic rise and also how much more companies and I guess educational institutions they're like favoring like candidates who have like a let's say a Chinese language not a degree, but like a certification that
right.
proves that they're, fluent in that language. And they're basically beginning to recognize the importance of understanding Chinese culture and language to also be able to navigate through the Chinese market and consumer base, and also just to, get to interact with these people because they do have some sort of prominence in the continent. And there's a lot of people who are traveling to China as well. Like Shanghai has recently become a very popular
Right.
tourist destination for a lot of Koreans here. I know a lot of Chinese tourists come to Korea as well. Like, so it's kind of like a vice versa thing. Interest in Chinese foods has also grown like very significantly. Like dishes like balatang, it remains as a very staple Chinese dish that a lot of Koreans appreciate. But there are also still some who remain with negative sentiments toward Chinese people and the country. Particularly, those are kind of driven by like conspiracy theories that are formed under geopolitical conflicts
Mm.
and stereotypes that they hold over China and its people. But not everyone is like that. And I can say that there's more people who are trying to learn more about China in a more positive way than those who are just like refusing to acknowledge the country at all.
So this investment trend is leading some changes culturally as well.
Mm.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, I just want to say that neither I nor Changju is an investor in the stock market. And this episode is only for informational purpose and does not constitute any investment advice. And the Chinese stock market, there's actually a phrase, a reminder that the stock market is risky and invest with caution. So if anyone is considering investing, so always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And with that being said, thank you very much, Chandru, for your time and joining us again.
Thank you.
From DJI's dominance in drones and Cato's breakthroughs in battery technology to the rapid rise of electric vehicles and the explosive growth of robotics, China's innovation engine is redefining industries worldwide. And now enters DeepSeek, a Chinese AI powerhouse whose R1 chatbot is going toe to toe with the best in the world, operating at 96% lower costs than competitors like OpenAI's GPT-4. But DeepSeek's rise might just be the beginning. The world is finally taking notice of China's expanding tech prowess, and the next chapter is only just unfolding. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Deep Dive. If you enjoyed what you just heard, don't forget to follow us on your podcast platforms. Just search for Deep Dive. You can also leave a comment to let us know what you want to learn about China and beyond. This episode is brought to you by me, Li Yunqi, and my colleagues Zhang Zhang and Qizhi. Special thanks to the Korea Herald reporter Li Jungjoo. I'll see you in the next one.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.